probably get me demonetized. But it's worth seeing why are we all Amiga nutters and why are we doing what we're doing. So some of you know about, I think it was November, sometime last year I started this project, and the idea was to create this, a new case for the Amiga 500 based on the concept that I launched about 30 years ago called the Checkmate A1500. And this was really just to redo it, but the way I liked it, because as I said before, I didn't design the original. I was the distributor for it, and I marketed it and I launched it to the world, but I didn't actually design it. And it's a lovely little product, and it's been covered in other places. But I wanted to do a new version, and as I've also said, is that I wanted to make an Amiga 3000 and Amiga 1000 inspired case to put, for example, in an Amiga 500 motherboard, yes, plus or normal, 1200, 600, put a Tabor card in it when it comes out, the A1222, any mini ITX, any micro ATX, and build yourself a computer. And here is the first example, and this is now finished. Now the reason I put that bit at the beginning, again, which will probably demonetize me, but whatever, is we've now got an Amiga. This is inside here is an Amiga 500. Hopefully you've seen the video, and I'll put a link to the previous video so you can see the inside of this, which I'm not going to cover. I might take it on the end, I don't know yet. But it's created Amiga 500, which I always wanted, basically, an enhanced version. This is why I'm calling it the Plus of the original 1500. And so in here I've got what I think is the most important product for the Amiga, is the Vampire, which is making this possible. Now if I switch and turn on this screen, so what we've got here is a benchmark, and we've got the A4040 there running at like whatever that is, about 15, and the Vampire 94, whatever. You can see that's the Vampire, that's an Amiga 4000, that's the Vampire, that's an Amiga 4000. It's made this a fantastic little computer, and I believe I've now got my, at the moment anyway, my ultimate Amiga system here. And as you may not know, depending on whether you've seen this project or not, inside it not only has 500, it has room, it's the original floppy disk drive, it has room for 5¼ devices, 3.5-inch devices, slot loading devices, etc. But it's really important for people to understand that this is a computer case which doesn't suit everybody, and it can't hold everything. And there's been a little bit of maybe it's the hot weather we've been having there, but a little bit of frustration lately, because I'm getting asked all these questions which are kind of, some of them, I'll give an example. Keyboard. The keyboard should not be really anything to do with the case. And as someone pointed out down Facebook, it's nothing to do with the case, it's just the keyboard. Now for the PC, as you can see here, now bearing in mind, the Amiga one can be black as well. I have to say this because some people say, can't you have the Amiga one? It comes in a number of colours. So if you look at this, hopefully the video is picking this up well. But if you look at ignore the colour of this is the prototype, okay? This can only be white, and it's not even a good colour, okay? The finished versions will be matching this colour. Now if you look at the colour here, see it's pretty close to an Amiga, which is sitting here. It's very close, in fact, and it was chosen by poll. Also, it's pretty close to my 4000, which is, the colour's got a little bit darker over time, but it's a very nice colour. But it also comes in black, okay? Now, you can have black or white. They're the two colours. And when the plastics, once the Kickstarter is completed and this front panel is no longer 3D printed, it will be injection moulded, and then it will match the same colour. So it'll be the same colour as that or the same colour as that. Or, I mean, if you want to, you can mix and match, I don't mind. But people see what's here and they see the prototype built and they say, oh, well, yeah, but I don't want the white on the black. So it's kind of little things. So yeah, colours. There'll be two colours, black and there'll be this called Oyster White, and as you can see, it's a pretty good match. Let's get onto the keyboards. The keyboard's been I always knew the keyboards would be an interesting thing, because this is the original A1500, Checkmate A1500 keyboard case, which is absolutely fantastic. Which I think we had a big hand in designing this, because I think this was actually, we did have a big hand in designing that. But this case will have, if you're buying it for an Amiga, or specifically an Amiga 500, okay? If you're buying it for 1200, 600, it's a problem, because at the moment you're not going to be able to use it. So I'm only talking about the 500 for now. So the 500, you put your 500 keyboard in this case, and there'll be a cable that goes to the back and plugs in the back, and then an extender cable inside that plugs onto the motherboard. That's an optional extra. It's not included in the case. It's very important for people to understand that. But that's the most economical way of doing this. Okay, but it still won't be particularly cheap, because we manufacture the case, cables, etc. Now, of course, people may say, oh, but it doesn't go underneath. Well, yeah, of course it doesn't go underneath, because you'd want a smaller one if you want to put it underneath. If you decide you want this and you don't want to have the riser on there, you can take the risers off and this drops down. However, even with this keyboard, it actually looks quite nice if you slide it underneath there. So, again, I think looks quite nice. Now, on the keyboard subject, whilst this will be the main option, this aluminium case might actually be metal, because it's quite a light metal. This will be the optional extra, that case with the cables to connect, and you just take your keyboard from your 500 into here. Okay, so as long as your keyboard's working okay, it'll work exactly the same. You'll also notice that there's LEDs on here as well for floppy disk and power. Now at the moment, you see my power's not turned on, because I've plugged this into the motherboard, which just means I can't plug this little LED panel into the same socket. I'm saying all this because I keep getting asked these questions. I'll try and be as accurate as I can. So on the keyboard subject, so that's as it stands. On the PC, it's not an issue. You get your keyboard, you plug it into your motherboard, and away you go. It's no problem putting whatever you like. But of course, the Amiga has obviously a problem, because it doesn't support USB keyboards. It doesn't support PS2 keyboards. It doesn't support anything like that. It doesn't support, I'll come on to the drives later on. But there are workarounds, and they're not cheap, okay? But there are workarounds. Now, one example is, I've got a really nice gentleman in this country, Carl, and he's developed this little cable kit here, which plugs in, I hope you can see it, but it plugs into the keyboard socket on the motherboard, and this is a PS2 keyboard. So, adapter. Now, that goes in the motherboard, that goes in the back of the case. And just to answer the question, yes, on the back of the case there is a panel, which is a user panel, which we will make a plate to go across it, so you can plug things in, screw in the PS2, screw in an HDMI connector, screw in an Ethernet, etc, etc, and the designs will be there, and you can make what you like. But this will allow you to plug in any PS2 compatible keyboard with a cable, or if you have one of the PS2 to USB adapters, you'll be able to use one of them. But unfortunately, it doesn't work with all USB keyboards unless they follow the PS2 signal standard. And so, at some point, but again, this is outside of the remit of the case manufacturers, but I'm just telling you the kind of issue. So that's quite a good one if you've got a case, if you've got a keyboard and you don't want to use the 500 keyboards. And this also, for the 1200 and the 600 owners, this is going to be possibly your route, although actually not this one. Yes, not this one, it's the next one I'm going to show you. So that's the PS2 adapter for the 500, and no, you don't need it for 2000, but it will work in the 2000. Now, the next one is this. This is an example, let me take that out. This is an example of a small board that's manufactured by a gentleman in Poland. And what it does is it's got a little ARM CPU on it, and you can plug into it a USB connector. Now, this is an I'm having a few little problems with it. We're just trying to resolve these issues at the moment, because basically there's a list of keyboards that are supported. Now, my little wireless dongle that goes into here works brilliantly with my wireless keyboard, But some of the USB keyboards that I've got don't seem to work, and we're just trying. I think I've got on this one I bought from a supplier over here, and I think there's some problems with drivers, etc. And we're just trying to resolve that, so to get as many USB keyboards working as possible. But at the moment, this is probably the most viable product out there. It's a fine little product, but of course it's about £25. And so you've got that. You have to put it into your. Now this will work in the Amiga 500. They also have a version for the 1200 and the 600. So if you've got a 1200, 600 motherboard, and you want to put it in here when it's ready. I'm not doing any shots of the 1200 in it or the 600 in it until after the Kickstarter, because then it's a new blanking plate. You can't see it's up. Yeah. Grab this. So on the back of the case, there's a blanking plate, okay, and there's different versions. That's why it's a modular system. There's different versions of this blanking plate, and on the tray there's all the studs that you need to screw all these different motherboards in, and then have that blanking plate at the back and allows you to fit it. So that's how come we can put all these different systems in it. We've got so far 4 different ones. One's for the 500, one's for the 1200 and 600, one's for mini ITX with horizontal card bays, and one with half height vertical card base. So there's quite a bit there. So for the 1200 and the 600, this is really your only option. Okay, 500, I think you'd be in some ways better off doing that. Now let me just show you what that will enable, because again I always knew the keyboard was going to be the biggest problem, and it's become, I won't say it's a headache, but it's distracting, I'll put it that way. So here's my wireless USB keyboard, just a cheap one, okay? Pick them up pretty cheaply. Yes, it's got Windows on there. Put a sticker on it, okay? And then we've got this, which is a cheap old PS2 keyboard. Pick that up for £5, okay? You're probably doing this at probably cheaper. Right. Now, this is my bit of a disappointment actually just recently, because at the moment I'm waiting for the firmware to update. For some reason it's not updating the firmware, so once that's done then I can get this one working. Now this one is a nice little keyboard I found. It's got a nice mechanical clicky keyboard, and you can see I've also replaced the 2 Amiga the Windows keys with Amiga keys. Yes, they're black, but it goes on there nicely, and I can get white keys as well. And you can get any kind of keyboard you like, and the plan is that the reason for going for this is called a 10 keyless keyboard. And what that means is there's no number pad like this. So it's basically, you can see it's about that size, which will slide underneath the tray. Now, some people said they don't like it with the risers. Take the risers off, or don't install the risers. You don't need the risers, then it looks just like a 3000, just a little bit wider. But if you do want the risers, then it will enable you to get one of these keyboards and you slide it underneath when you need the space, because obviously a keyboard does take quite a bit of space. Anyway, so that's that keyboard. So I'm trying to get these options for you so you can build it as you like. Now let's get on to the other subject, of course, which is, I had a question about drives. So how am I going to fit the drives into the system? Well, again, this is not an issue for me. I mean, this is not the case builder's problem to deal with. So if it was a PC, right, you can have a slot loading SATA drive, okay? You can have a floppy disk, you can have a 5¼ inch drive bay with IDE, you can have anything you like in it, it'll all fit, you plug it straight into the motherboard, it all works, there's no issues at all. But of course on the Amiga, it's stagnated for so long that we don't have a native SATA drive connector. So that's a bit of a problem. So the one in here is SATA. You can get typical. No, here we go. You can get IDE drives, and you can plug them in. For example, on the Vampire, you can put because it's got an IDE interface on it. You can put a hard drive, or in this case, I've got a compact flash sitting in the bag, and an IDE drive. So now this is a 5¼ inch drive, okay? And it has IDE in the back, so stick it in, connect it up, wire it up, that's fine, it will work perfectly. But there's also an option with, I haven't tested this, but I'm going to test this, on here with the SATA, any device that's SATA, there is a SATA to IDE converter, and I have one in my cupboard, which at some point I'm going to test. But this is more a case of me supporting people who want to build systems. But of course the Amiga does have this problem, unfortunately, and it's something that needed addressing 20 years ago, but it never really was. So we're kind of being caught up on this. Anyway, so most drives now tend to be SATA, obviously, most CD-ROMs, and this is just, I'm quite lucky I've got one of them. So if you can get an IDE drive, I would get one. But of course then, that's a 5.25, but the thing about this is, it's a nice slot loading drive, and it fits in the aesthetic, and this front panel's been made accordingly. So, but you have to get around the problem, it's got a SATA interface. But that again is that's not the case design issue. This is the reality of actually building one, because obviously this is aimed at people who are happy to build complete systems. Now, well, let's get to the part where not everyone can build their own system. And I get that, I totally understand that. So I will be doing building systems for people, but the problem we're going to have then is you need to take my advice on what is best for you. So if I'm going to build a system to give you an Amiga experience, it kind of falls into two brackets. Do you want to put, for example, a 500 in it? Okay, so you want a 500 and you want to be able to use certain devices. You know, I know which bits are going to go and which bits are going to connect and which bits aren't going to connect. So there'll be some advice and etc. on that. And I will probably be building these. Now, unfortunately, with Amigas, they're not going to be cheap. If you want to build a nice, powerful Amiga, sadly, it's not going to be a cheap enterprise. Now, this is where we come to, for example, on the Vampire. Now, if you was to buy an Amiga 500, now I've given you a Zorro slot in there, so you can. There's a fantastic graphics card that's just been come out, and it's got a whole load of extra bits on it, which sound amazing. And that, of course, will go into the Zorro 2 slot. And that will be great. So if you then want to put accelerator on the base, you can do that. And so there's lots of ways you can do this. But for me at the moment, the Vampire's the way to do this. Now, if you're going to have a 500 in there, you can buy one of the Vampires that plugs into the 500. And on that, you will get accelerated graphics, as you can see from here. You get accelerated graphics. You'll get an accelerated, really fast 060 processor, which is backwardly compatible with just about everything, works beautifully. There's an optional Ethernet on board. There's an IDE controller on board, so you can put your compact flash or hard drive or your or DVD CD-ROM. So there's a lot of options there. Now, but if you're going to go to all that expense, there's the other option which you could go for. It's just, and I know it's not out yet, but I don't think it's that far away, is the Vampire standalone. Now, with the Vampire, let's get past all this. Some people saying it's not real Amiga. I don't really want to get into that debate. I think I've kind of put that one to bed. But it's a great way of getting a full Amiga experience, run all the Amiga software, put it in this case. It probably may well be the cheaper option, because if you get that, you're only buying the Vampire standalone. Now, I don't know the prices. If you want to put an Amiga 500, you've got to buy 500, then you've got to have the adapter board, then you've got to have, obviously, you need an IDE interface, and then you're going to need, well, you won't because that's on the Vampire, isn't it? So, do you see what I'm saying? It's trying to say it gets a little bit complicated, so you need to understand what's happening here. Now, I am going to try and make this as simple as possible for you, and do sections on my website to cater for people who maybe just want to build a machine. No, they don't need any advice from me. They know what they're doing. The case is ready. Once the Kickstarter's done, the design is done. Okay, so hopefully we've covered all these bases for you. Then you get the person who's a bit less confident and is not capable of building a machine and just want it out of the box. Then there'll be probably a couple of options. We'll build it hopefully with the Vampire. And maybe not. If you've got a 500 and you want to put it in, yes, okay, we could do that. Still want to put accelerator in there, the options will be open, but you know, there are compromises you have to make, because you know, like with any case design, you know, things have to go in there, etc. I'll give you one example. If you put an A500 Plus in here, it fits beautifully, but unfortunately it sits halfway across here. Okay, so that then stops you putting a drive in this bay. Having said that, we're going to have Rob's going to do me an adapter whereby we will use the top slot, which is the 100-pin Zorro slot, make a little adapter and plug it into there. It then sits above a slot loading drive. So you can put a slot loading drive, and the A500 Plus can sit above it with an accelerator card. It's all beautiful. So there's all these compromises you need to make. Another example, see the front here? I'm going to be doing, obviously I think you may have seen in an earlier video when I had USB sockets and audio in and out. But on an Amiga, there's nowhere to plug that in. So the panel reverse, we're going to do a reversible one, so when you get this adapter, it will just look like there's no hole there. And if you turn it round, you can then mount things. So there's lots of bits and pieces that we still need to do on this. Bear with us, but as I said, the key thing at the moment is you will not see a 1200 put into the case, and you will not see a 600 put into the case, mainly because it's already costing an awful lot of money. And I don't really need to be spending a few £100 more to show a 1200 in when I know it goes in. It's gonna fit, it's not an issue, it's just a slightly different panel at the back, but I don't want to be, I have to draw the line somewhere. So once I've got the PC version built, and I need to do another one of these, a new version of this, which is, as you may be aware, the Kickstarter is basically about paying for the molds to be manufactured so that we can then have injection molded product, these things kicked out for a £5 each kind of thing. Whereas at the moment, this one cost about £220 with a couple of panels, so it's really expensive. And so there's only one at the moment. I need to make one more for that, and then I can build the PC, which will be a virtual reality PC, which is going to be part of the Kickstarter launch. So I'm going to do that, but basically we're ready to go now. So hopefully that's answered a lot of the questions, but I do get a lot of questions about this, and I can't, as I said, I can't do everything. The case is a case. It's designed for a system builder to take the case and go and build an offer to build complete systems, and there'll probably be one or two options, and the PC one or two options, because we can't do too many obviously to start with. But if you are capable of building, you're quite happy building computers, then you will know the issues that you have to face. For example, how do you connect a SATA slot loading DVD drive to an Amiga? I assume you would understand that. On the slot loading, what I suggest you do, they are very hard to come by nowadays, and they're about £20. LG do a slot loading one, which I can't remember. If I can find the model number, I'll put it in the description. But I would suggest you buy one if you do want one of these slot loaders, because I'm not saying they'll run out, but people don't necessarily use them that much today, so they may be a bit hard to track down. Anyway, there you go. So I've got my system. Let me close this down. Yeah, so you can see one more little thing. If I go over here, if I switch over to here, let me close that. It doesn't want to close, probably because I've got to close it. Right. So as you can see, it runs pretty fast. I'm going to quit that down. No, it doesn't want to close. That should be. There we go. Let's get rid of that. So as you can see, it's built. You've got a nice Amiga 500. Has a built-in 300 watt SFX power supply, which is way more than any Amiga's ever going to need. You're never ever going to stress it. It's powered. It plugs into a Zorro board that sits inside on the side here, which gives you an internal 86 pin connector and a Zorro 2 100 pin connector, but you plug the power supply into that, and when you press this button, it turns it on and off. Okay, I mean, I'm stating the obvious, but so we have this nice little switching system. So there's no external power supply needed. It's completely self-contained. If you want to have a big keyboard like this, you want to use your Amiga. If you want to use your Amiga 500 keyboard, which I don't see any reason why you wouldn't want to, because they're nice keyboards, you'll be able to buy the optional case with the cable kit, and then that will plug into the back of the system. And it's quite nice because you can run your cables if you've got the riser, even if you can't slide it underneath. The riser is quite nice for moving things out. Or one point on the riser, if you're building a virtual reality or a high-end PC, there is an option for a water cool unit to go into the system, because at the base of the tray there's a 120mm fan opening with all the vents. Now you can just put a 120mm fan in there if you want to, just to suck some of the air, as well as the 3 fans in the back of the case. So I don't see the heat being a problem. However, if you do want to put a water cooler, you can't just get any one and put it in there, but it's a specific one or two that will screw into that, and it misses the power supply and it will cool the CPU. It's only for the CPU cooler, but it will also suck heat out of the case at the same time. But you do need to have, because it blows the air down through the bottom of the case, so you need to have the risers on, so that's quite important for that. And again, I mean, I designed this so that I can get my mechanical keyboard just sitting over there, my PC one, slide underneath my PC. So at some point in maybe even the next video, you will see my desktop over there with my VR system set up. Now on that one, I'm doing a package, and if I build the complete system, I'll build a VR. They will all be VR compatible, because there's no point in me bothering otherwise. They'll all be VR capable systems. But I'll also go. I'm putting together so we can include a full emulation package. I don't want to talk about it yet because just trying to finish things off. But a really good Amiga emulation. You probably know what it is anyway. But a really good Amiga emulation package that runs seamlessly and runs beautifully. To give people a really good experience of an Amiga, the Amiga operating system. And I'm hoping the PC community, if they have a retro leaning or they want a nice desktop case and they like this, they'll get with it the Amiga, and then the more people will see it. Okay. One final thing. One of the things which I'm going to be showing soon is, I've talked about this in the past. We have, now you want to look, if you want to do a bit of research, Amiga, search on Google, Siamese system Amiga, search for that. I'm basically I seem to be bringing all my products back, but anyway, it's just that one. And what we're doing is, working with a couple of a really clever developer, we're putting together a system to use to be able to stick a Raspberry Pi in here, switchable mode, so you can switch. Just use an Amiga M, switch to the PC and back again. So if you want to use, say you want to have this as your main computer, but you don't have heavy PC usage, you just want to use your Amiga for what you've ever used it for, but you still need to go on the web, and you still need to type letters or use spreadsheets, that kind of thing. You can switch to the Raspberry Pi display, use the same keyboard and mouse, okay, share an internet connection between the two machines, and you'll be able to use the Raspberry Pi, Chrome on the Raspberry Pi, preferably one of the new ones because the performance is actually pretty good. And then you'll be able to use the word processor, spreadsheets, and anything else you can run on Linux on the Raspberry Pi, and then switch back all seamlessly. And the software is pretty much done. So I'm just literally waiting to get a copy of the latest software and do some tests, and I will put a video out about that. But that basically means your Amiga will then have a Raspberry Pi second processor, which I think opens up enormous potential. And for the some people may decide, I just want this really cool case, put a Raspberry Pi in it and a keyboard. Maybe not, but I bet there will be someone that wants to do that. Possibly because of my video, the Raspberry Pi, and the Amiga. But I see that more as a second processor, and if you search Siamese systems Amiga back in the 90s, you'll understand what I'm trying to achieve again, and I think it's still relevant today. Anyway, that's enough of that waffling. And as I said, it's been a bit of a journey, not that long journey, about 9 months, I suppose. It's only 9 months, but from an idea in my head that I thought would just be for me. Now we're up to 1,250 members of my Facebook group. So I think a lot of people agree that it's just being nice. And thanks for the support, and I'll speak to you soon. Thank you very much.